Shelley, darling, will you please light these candles for me?
Oh, Mary, darling. Astonishing creature.
Aye, Lord Byron.
Frightened of thunder, fearful of the dark, and yet you have written a tale that sent my blood into icy creeps. Look at her, Shelley. Can you believe that bland and lovely brow conceived of Frankenstein?
The whole idea of monsters and evil forces, I think, were much more a part of everyday life and believed because they had no other explanation.
The publishers did not see that my purpose was to write a moral lesson of the punishment that befell a mortal man who dared to emulate God.
Hurry.
Frankenstein's monster, when Mary Shelley wrote it, you know, the imagination of that period, that's all they could do is write stories and be as detailed as they could about these creations.
I don't even consider these monster movies. I always say that there are no monsters in these movies, just people with very bad problems.
Here's the final touch.
It's not a horror story, it's a science fiction story. And it had to do with a lot of the potentials that were seen to be the possible dangers of scientific advancement.
Think of it, the brain of a dead man, waiting to live again in a body I made with my own hands. With my own hands.
They were just beginning to get into the idea of using surgical technique to restore significant quality of life issues for people. I mean, it hadn't been possible before, and it was just beginning to be. And there was a lot of speculation as to how much you could improve a person surgically. And I think that a lot of that was what Mary Shelley was playing with.
She's alive! Alive!
It's one of those themes that is brought out by all those monster movies, and particularly Frankenstein, who's a classic victim. He was part of this ambitious dream of a scientist to kind of better God in a way and create life himself, and he's brought to life, and then he's left on his own. He's very much a victim.
Everybody thinks he's just a monster and he's really scary, but I know that he's misunderstood. He's Lenny in Of Mice and Men, and he's the Elephant Man, and he's a man-child, and he's just misunderstood. And that gives him a whole complexity, and I think you watch Boris Karloff and you get that.
Will you play with me?
Any kid who's ever felt like the outcast at school or didn't fit into the cliques has always been that kind of character that's just trying to make sense of, I don't want to hurt anybody, I just want to fit in and I just want to understand what my place is.
No!
He doesn't mean to kill this little girl. You feel sorry not only for the little girl, you feel sorry for him because you know it's kind of all over. Frankenstein has to be scary, and he has to be a monstrous. But I felt like in the original movie, you have to feel sympathy for him. And that's a fine line because you don't want to get sappy. And Frankenstein, he's angry. And he's willing to kill. And people are trying to kill him. And so he's got all this baggage.
The monster is, like any of us, really looking for love and acceptance. And it's sort of a tragic tale of what can happen when a human being or a monster doesn't get that. You end up pulling for him in a way.
Friend, good. Friend, good.
I saw The Bride of Frankenstein because that's so great. That's also a terrific movie, and some people say it's better than the original. And because they were so well done, the people who made them loved them.
All I watched when I was a kid were science fiction and especially horror movies. And I grew up with, Famous Monsters magazine. I had every one.
If you read Famous Monsters in the 60s, every issue had a picture of Frankenstein in it. So again, it was part of your psyche. So I don't know if I chose it as much as it chose me.
We're far enough along the series of films now for them to have their own iconic history. When I watched the original, everybody thinks they know it's alive, it's alive, it's alive. And I watched it thinking, it's going to be melodramatic and silly. And it is melodramatic, but it's rather magnificent, actually. It's the central piece of the original movie.
Oh, it's alive!
It's alive! It's alive!
There is a kind of relish in seeing a story retold, over the years, and a new generation's perspective on it.
Something down here.
And a new generation's take on what that would be like.
I'd say he's a size 17. About 360 pounds, 8.5 to 9 feet tall. There's a bad gimp in his right leg. 3 copper teeth.
How do you know he has copper teeth?
He's standing right behind you.
Move!
Oh my God! Frankenstein monster!
Monster? Who is the monster here? I have done nothing wrong, and yet you and your kind all wish me dead!
When I knew I was going to do it, obviously your mind is going, oh, this is an incredible opportunity. But while doing it, the script and the movie and the storyline are so completely original.
Now listen, Carl, whatever you do,
that you really feel like you're creating
stare at him.
Frankenstein's monster for the first time.
I'm staring at him. Is that a man?
Actually, it's 7 men. Parts of them, anyway.
By exposing me, you have condemned me! Me and all of humanity!
You have a character that has a personal history with everybody, and yet you have maybe an idea of a different approach to it. Not so much what everyone remembers in the past productions of it.
May others be as passionate in their hunting of you.
There's a fan base there that's very easy to upset if you start changing the rules or redesigning certain things that are kind of, built in. And Stephen is such a huge fan of those original characters that he was always conscious of retaining the original mythology, yet still wanting to show you something different and exciting.
Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil!
Frankenstein is such an icon. I said he had to have a flat head, he had to have bolts on his neck, and he had to have the Doc Martens on his feet. And I said, other than that, we were really going to play with him.
We did facial molds, and they had the bust of me. It sort of just developed.
Stephen really wanted it to look like Schuler, because Schuler has such a great face. He didn't want a monster or something scary. He wanted a real humanity to the character. And when we started designing it, if I kept Schuler's face and built on top of it, it would have been just so big in areas. So what I did was took Schuler and built him out and thickened his face up, but trying still to sculpt it so it looks just like Schuler, but bigger.
The most exciting part is like saying, okay, we have to do a Frankenstein now. It's not just about scars and pieces of skin together and things. Let's do something else. You need to make sure the vision is appropriate, because it's already hard to work with guys in suits on set, but if they don't see what they're doing and if they can't walk or they can do this and that, you don't want to create too many limitations. You will have limitations, but you try to minimize them.
I said, I want something like the Nautilus, to where it's like all old iron. It looks like 1800. It was, but a really beautiful design to it, and rivets. And then Stephen said, yeah, we'll put a little lightning storm going on when we see the top of his head. Like, oh, that's cool.
It's like one of those little toys. I have leg extensions that go on at the end, hands that go on separately, and the makeup.
It takes 2 of us to apply his face makeup, and then it takes about 3 or 4 people to get him into the suit, and then there's the mechanics. So when he walks on set, there's about 7 or 8 people following him down.
I say I feel like Britney Spears, and I have 8 or 9 handlers, so.
Look up a little bit, look up to the sky. And cut.
Deep down, there is some sexy something about him, and I'm so glad that I could bring that out.
Frankenstein talks. That's the big difference. And you got Schuler, who did a great job.
You did